You see, it's not just a channel. Communication is the substance of decision making. In this theory, a precise structure is viewed as a necessity. I need to give you guys a little bit of background on why we need structure in group communication. Like I said before, I think we've all been in a situation where you're making plans with your groups, and it just isn't going anywhere. And I think I can agree that we've all been there. And if you look at it, the task to be completed is very simple. You just want to hang out at the same place at the same time. So why is that so difficult and frustrating? Well, it might be obvious to say, but it's a lot easier making a decision one-on-one with someone than it is with 3 or more people. Because combining individuals together opens the door to possibly different and conflicting social, psychological, and contextual influences, and these factor into how we communicate with each other and how we solve tasks. It's inevitable. So let's take the example of this coming weekend or making plans with your friends. These influences can be seen in what each individual desires to do. So in a social context, one might bring up the idea of going outside and playing a soccer game or doing anything outdoorsy. But then your other friend says, no, I don't really like doing that. I don't see athletics as an enjoyable weekend activity. You see, it's as simple as that. What we like, what we dislike, what we want to do, what we don't want to do. These factors subconsciously influence the way that we communicate and affects how we make decisions. Social interaction can bring out the very best in each member, or it can diminish the reaction and hinder communication. Because people usually like to do things their own way. So when we get into groups, many of us will communicate the way that we know how, the way that we're comfortable with. And that, in turn, depends on how we make decisions. Randy Harukawa states in his book, Communication and Group Decision Making, that communication processes are the primary means through which social, psychological, and contextual influences are sustained, which makes them prerequisites for making decisions. This is the background on why we need structure. Because if we continue to make decisions without organization, then the process will be time-consuming, emotionally draining, and unsuccessful in the process and the outcome. These theorists saw this problem of these influences affecting how we make tasks when they just don't need to. So they created a 4-step outline for groups to follow to enhance this decision-making process. It's only 4 steps, and it allows us to totally eliminate all social influences from entering the decision-making process. The first step is you analyze the problem. This is, you're trying to figure out what the nature of the problem is, what's causing it, what are the symptoms, the tendencies, the origin. This step is basically just to get an overall view of what you're dealing with. But failure to completely analyze the problem can affect the outcome. The next step is to set a goal. And when you set a goal, you set a solution. If you don't have a solution to the task, then you're never going to solve anything. You want to identify any alternatives. So that just means brainstorming and contributing as many ideas that you have down on paper. And that can lead to the last step, which is evaluating the positive and negative characteristics of each alternative. So you begin to discuss each alternative and narrow it down to one, which will eventually help you solve your problem. Now, it doesn't matter what order you go in. The theorists just believe that you need to address them and complete them, and this will make an effective outcome. So you could start with setting a goal first, and then maybe going to your alternatives, or then back to the problem, analyzing the problem. Then there's counteractive communication. And this happens when disruptive communication takes place. You then want to get right back to those steps, and you use counteractive communication to do so. The functional perspective of group decision-making is labeled as a counteractive communication because it brings your group back to the focus and it heeds organization. The theory of functional perspective of group decision-making uses communication as a tool by which group members make decisions and build successful solutions to problems. It emphasizes on the likelihood of making a good decision. So group interaction can have a negative or a positive effect on the final outcome. But following the guidance of this theory, you can now understand why we need structure, why we need organization, even in the simplest terms of making a weekend plan. So I encourage you the next time that you are making plans with your friends, which will probably happen today, I want you to remember this theory. Remember these steps. And you will find that making plans with your group of friends is going to be so much easier than it was before. Questions? Yes?
Jordan, do you have a sense of what's the most frequent issue, problem that breaks the thing down? What's the worst thing a group member can do when trying to make a plan?
Honestly, I would think groupthink. There's a theory that if you have a really strong leader in your group, they kind of call the shots and everyone just follows even if they don't agree. That's another theory, but I think that has a lot to do with controlling the group and people not voicing their opinions. I think that can really hinder on making any sort of, like, if you're in work and your boss gives you a task, hey, this needs to be completed. One person wants to do it this way, you want to do it the other way. You see it's more effective, but you don't say anything. I think that is probably the worst out of them all.
Thank you for your works cited page, because my question was going to be, did you only look at one text?
No.
Because I'm very curious about the statement that the order doesn't matter. Brilhart and Galana say it matters very much that we start with knowing what the problem is. How can you start the problem to solve something if you haven't analyzed it first? So I was very curious that, I think it was Randy here was the one who said it didn't matter, and I was just really curious if any of these other books that you studied agreed with him or challenged that.
It was, well, the first time I did this speech, I talked with BBH, and she said that I actually had to point it out, and it wasn't something I included in my first, so I didn't really see it as I thought, in my personal opinion, looking at this theory, I think the process of analyzing the problem, goal setting, alternatives, and positive and negative characteristics, I saw that as a very nice flow. Mm-hmm. But I did read, and Randy did state that it can fluctuate. But also, I think it's more beneficial having it in this order, and every textbook that I did read had it in that order. So it was a gimme.
All right, so he's the one that is different. An authoritative organization, then you might have to talk about would be in front of the lectern. I thought it broke down the wall between us. Also, the very opening example that she gave related very much to all of you in the room, and immediately even watching some of you were kind of smiling and relating to that right away, like, oh yeah, just this morning we talked about, are you going to go to Commerce at 9? Your audience relating, and then she did what we teach in all of our classes. In her conclusion, she brought it back to, and probably today you're going to, have this type of decision making. So well done.
Another thought there, just for me. Again, you've got two different audiences, and students are well aware of that. You've got basically students and faculty. I've seen a lot of these things. You did something very small, but that was meaningful. You got up and started your...
Jordan?